Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Govs on the Go Faculty Spotlight, a podcast featuring faculty in the College of Arts and Letters here at Austin Peay State University. My name is Dr. Buzz Hoon. I'm the Dean of the College. I'm also the host of the podcast. And today I'm talking with Margaret Rennerfeldt, who is a professor in the Department of Theater and Dance here at Austin Peay. Margaret, so great to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
So I know you have some roots in Illinois, which I also have some roots in Illinois. You've spent some time there, but I always like to begin with how and why you came to Austin Peay and why stay.
So yes, I came from Illinois and I've actually lived most of my life there. I was born there, obviously left to attend school, but was back in Northern Illinois. And why I came here, I had been piecing together a living between two higher education institutions as a visiting faculty in one, adjunct in another. I was running a dance company and teaching at a school, dance school. And I just had reached this point where I just really wanted to have one job. And in my area, there was really nothing, there were no dance programs in higher ed that were hiring. And I have relatives in East Tennessee and have always liked it. So when I was job searching, I really restricted my job search to the Southeast. All the states, you know, Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia. I was kind of looking in that area, not all the way down to Florida, but anyway, and that's how I ended up here. I applied and interviewed, and actually, when I accepted this position, my youngest was finishing her last year of middle school, so I spent my first year here away from my family. And so my husband and youngest daughter, who was still at home, finished that year so she could finish middle school, and then she started high school here. So I did that drive like every couple of weeks. It was about a 7.5 hour drive. Either I would go or they would come down. So it wasn't terrible, but yeah, definitely challenging that first year.
Yeah. Well, you can do a lot of things when you're younger.
Right.
So you are and I want to make sure that I get this right, so you feel free to correct me. You're a somatic movement educator and experiencing practitioner?
Yes, you're so close.
Okay.
So somatic movement educator is one body of work.
Yes. And
then somatic experiencing is another body of work.
Gotcha.
And I'll try to separate the two. Somatic movement education covers a lot of, to be registered under that title, it covers a lot of different somatic practices. Many things fall under that category, and I'm just going to reel off some names that you may or may not be familiar with, but things like Alexander technique, which is very popular among actors, and Feldenkrais technique, and even Pilates, yoga even is considered a somatic practice. My lineage comes from Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, who founded a pedagogy called Body-Mind Centering. And I studied a little bit with her, but mostly under one of her teachers. And it's a pretty extensive training where we investigate developmental movement patterns, obviously anatomy, bones, muscles, organs, fluids, all of those things, and how disrupting patterns or inviting new patterns can help us be more fully expressive as humans. And it fits very well into the dance world, because dance training can often undermine what is natural and authentic, because we're doing unnatural things with our bodies. Yeah. And sometimes those habits can be, like you see ballerinas walking like outward rotated, which is not a great habit to have outside of the dance studio. You really want to find your normal, typical gait again. So that's what that body of work is. That led me into somatic experiencing, which is trauma resolution, which is founded by Dr. Peter Levine. And so I can say a couple short anecdotal sentences. Trauma is in your biology, not your biography. So it's not in the story, it's what happens in your nervous system, what happens to you in the absence of an empathetic witness or presence. So in the dance world, a lot of times when people start moving their bodies, not just in dance, but this is where I see it a lot, when people start moving their bodies, they start to notice things. And sometimes they don't know why suddenly they're having a panic attack, or why they're emotional, or why they're having a flashback to a memory they haven't thought about in years. And that's the body. That's the body going, okay, now we're ready to pay attention to this and allow it to move through. So that work is kind of separate from what I do at the university, because it is it's a practice that would be considered more, it's not a therapy, but they consider it a therapeutic practice. Sure. However, it does inform how I teach. It has really shifted the way I teach over the past few years in terms of noticing and observing students and understanding how they're coming into the room, and understanding the pace at which we can push, or when we have to step back to allow things to process before we push farther into growth.
Wow, I did not know that, and now I'm so glad I asked about that.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you've taught dance over the years. What are some of your favorite dances, movements to teach, and why?
Oh my goodness. So I love all kinds of dance. I love all the dance classes that I teach. So I'm going to talk about what I'm currently teaching. I'm teaching ballet, and I love it. It's the first type of dance that I learned. I think it's beautiful, it's difficult, and it's ridiculous. I like to make fun of it also, because it comes from this aristocracy and this power structure that, you know, was meant to continue that power structure with the king and queen. And so we've got our soloist and demi-soloist, and then the court. You know, your corps de ballet is the court, and then you've got the peasants, which are the rest of the company. So when you look at a classical ballet, you'll still see that power structure. And the movements are totally unnatural, and so I can really enjoy teaching this beautiful yet unnatural technique and helping the students understand that I often say, if it feels ridiculous, you're doing it right. I'm also teaching anatomy, which I'm obsessed with. I love, when I teach it, I learn more and more about our body, and it fits right in with the somatic practices, because we're always looking at the body and how it moves, how it's meant to function in the most, you know, typical healthy environment. I'm teaching a yoga for performers class this semester, and we're spending a lot of time doing the relaxation portion of it. I felt like there was a real need for students to have an opportunity to regulate their nervous system within the context of a class. So they're learning yoga, they're learning about their body, and they're also learning how to downregulate. So that's been great as well.
Okay, and maybe the dean can take that class.
You are welcome. It's actually, we would be finishing up right now. They got to go a little early today so that we could meet. But
good.
Yeah, anytime.
So for your own enjoyment, what kind of dance would Margaret do?
For my own enjoyment, I really like to do, I guess you would call it modern dance, and also, so there's another somatic practice that I didn't mention, which is called authentic movement, which is moving from just inner impulses and without necessarily any music, without an audience. It's just doing what your body is calling you to do and following those impulses. It can be therapeutic, but it's also kind of an improvisational way to move. So, and I like Yeah, I just like that it's less, modern dance in general is less constrictive than ballet. It doesn't have as many rules to follow. Your body can assume all sorts of positions and qualities, and it doesn't have to fit into this pedagogy.
Well, one of my questions that just of interest to me over what I've noticed over my lifespan is how how dance has evolved over that period of time. And I'm sure you, as somebody that has taught it and has seen it and put it into works, have you also seen the way that we express ourselves through dance over the years? Have you seen major changes, or what kind of conclusions have you come to?
That's a good question. You know, there's trends that happen. I can remember years ago attending a dance conference and, you know, seeing dance after dance after dance, and there were probably more than half where there was this trend where people were transitioning and changing their costumes on stage in front of the audience. Not like totally undressing, but allowing us to see the process. And a lot of dance, theatricality, is hidden from the audience. So there was a lot of this, let's show them what the process is. And then, you know, a few years after that, there was a lot of, let's let everyone hear the breath, because, and a lot of really effortful breathing. And again, stepping away from the magic where, you know, you try to breathe steadily and you run off stage and then you hyperventilate, you know, or get oxygen, whatever you need to come back on. And because it was this idea that to make it look easy. And so this efforting and showing the process was a trend that was happening. Today, I feel like people are much more comfortable with social justice issues coming up on stage, having narrative, when I say narrative, text, like voice recordings, or actually speaking or singing during the performance, making statements that might be considered pushing the envelope. There's a little less pretty, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And it's unapologetic. I really think that this, what I've been seeing lately is, if it makes you uncomfortable, then maybe I've gotten my point across. Because there's, you know, if we're not uncomfortable, then we're not growing in some ways.
Now, you've had works that you've either worked or had works commissioned overseas, across the country, what do you think that you would say you're most proud of in terms of, I mean, it's probably the latest thing that you're always working on, but over a span of time, what do you think you really take pride in terms of how you worked on that?
Well, the thing that's popping into my head is something that I did here. And it was, I think I finished it in 2018. It was called Gotta Make a Dance, The Last Gasp. And it took me 2 years. And I knew what I wanted to do, but I allowed myself to take the time to do it. So the Gotta Make a Dance comes from, because I'm really going to date myself, but way back in the day, there was a show called The Little Rascals, which I used to watch all the time.
Me too.
And the bully, I don't remember his name, but he was sent home from school where he was supposed to learn a poem. And he didn't. He spent the whole time like on the playground or taking a stick and, you know, like hitting a can down the road, and we could hear in his head, learn that poem, gotta learn that poem. And eventually he learns it and he cries. It's kind of a love poem. Anyway, the Gotta Make a Dance is the thing that I always feel, especially when I was running a dance company or in academia, of producing scholarly work. Gotta make something. And the pressure sometimes like suppresses the creative process. So what I ended up doing was talking about the process. So I made a voice recording of myself just babbling into a microphone with my colleagues at the time who had a recording studio. Just everything that goes through my head about what I need to do to make a dance and some of the choreographic principles that I might use. And then I took, they sort of mixed it in a way, and I used that soundtrack for part one, which was kind of just a depiction of the dancer coming in with the boombox, setting it down, and okay, here I am, I'm in the studio and I'm gonna work. And then the second half was the dance that I made. And the dance was really the process of me losing my mother and that whole process of grief and the cycle of life and death. And I don't know what else was in it. It just kind of came out of me. And the students did a really beautiful job, and we presented it at a conference. It was selected for the gala that year. And that was really great, but one of the great things about the presentation of that was it was an audience full of dancers, and so in part one, they got all the jokes. Like, I presented it here and there were funny parts, but the dancers got all the inside jokes where it was like, oh, I could do this. Oh, Merce Cunningham's already done that. Oh, I could try this. Oh, Trisha Brown, I can't copy other, like I was naming icons from the dance world that you can be influenced by and realize it's not an original idea, and will you ever have one? And so it was a really fun process for me, and I was very proud of the students and the finished product, and also the collaboration I did with my colleagues, Dr. Bailey and Sarah Bailey, because not only did they mix my voice, Dr. Bailey created a musical piece for part two, just based on talking with me and what kind of music I liked and what I was feeling. And he sent me the track, and I was like, that's it, it's beautiful. Like, wow. There were no like, oh, could I have more of this or a little of that? It was just like this synchronicity of ideas and process that was really great. Yeah.
Well, that's terrific. Now, you mentioned about going to workshops, and I just want to acknowledge that you were, since you've been on staff and since you came here, you were helping to build the dance program. You're helping to not only build the numbers, but you're also building the reputation. And part of that is having to go and take students and also be go to conferences, go to workshops, find and let people know about our program. So can you tell somebody that's listening or watching just about the importance of always having to recruit? I mean, it's that's what we do.
Well, if we're not out there, there's not a lot of people that are, unless they're local, that are gonna find us in terms of a dance program. And so going out into schools and to recruiting events to be able to talk about our program, it is very important, because what I've encountered is a lot of people don't understand that you can major in dance and make a living and have a job. And a lot of times parents are like, but you got to major in something else as a fallback. And my answer to that is, but I have a job. I've always had a job in dance. I've never not had a job in dance. I might have supplemented it with other things, but especially now, there are so many opportunities, whether it's in higher ed, schools, choreography, cruise ships, commercial television. There's so many opportunities out there. And in particular here, students can kind of design their own pathway, particularly if they're going the pathway of the BA. And they can have either another major or a minor if they want. But even within the BFA, we're not a program that says you must focus in ballet, or you must focus in modern, or you must focus in tap. Like, if they come in with expertise in one area, yes, we want them to continue to refine that, but they can venture into other areas and gain skills that way as well.
I feel like we have so much more to unearth about your teaching, and I'm running out of time, but one of my last questions that I want to ask about is working with Noel, and what it's like for you to work, because you've collaborated together in terms of working on some productions.
Yeah. That's a funny question because we collaborate very little, but on some productions, yes, where I have been the choreographer where he directs. And the collaboration goes like this. Okay, when do you want to rehearse the dances? And I'll go, okay, I need 2 hours to stay in this day. Okay, and that's it. There's not a whole lot of discussion after that. There's no like, well, this is what I'm looking for, or, you know, a lot of guidance. And part of that is maybe because of our, like, he knows my style and what I do, and but he's very hands-off and lets the choreographer, whether it's me or anybody else, have their process. And he lit my pieces for the most recent dance concert, and you know, I did give some feedback. There was a couple places where, like in the piece that was superhero, I wanted it to be a little brighter, a little like flashier, and the other piece that I made, just, you know, giving a few notes on really the intensity, but just having that familiarity and knowing there's very little communication. You would think there would be more, but there's not a lot.
Well, yeah. When you know somebody, you know somebody.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you for being on the podcast. Like I said, I feel like we could continue talking, but I do appreciate the insight that you shared about your experiences.
It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much.
And thanks to all of our viewers and listeners out there for joining us. We will continue to profile some of the outstanding professors we have here in the College of Arts and Letters at Austin Peay State University. So until next time, stay safe, take care, and God bless.